Alrighty, welcome, keepers of the block of horror. We are kicking off a new horrifying series called WrAIth, which is basically our creative cauldron of death. The goal is to invite you and special guests into the creative and collaborative process from start to finish to see the types of characters, stories, and blood-curdling screams we can create together. Remember, subscribe if you want to comment live on the WrAIth live streams. So this first episode, our special guests are going to take 3 out of our top 10 AI summoned ideas voted on in the Block of Horror Discord. You can find the link below to join. And they will whittle it down to their favorite, then turn it into stepping stones of a fully fleshed out horror story, all here and live over the next 1.5 hours. So from there, the sky's the limit. As you know, that's our ethos here at Block of Horror. It'll effectively become a kind of open-ended story and world that anyone in the community can play with, reimagine, and collaborate in. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our special guests today. We have Patrick and Aaron. I'll let them detail a little bit more, but you may know Patrick Mediate from the Scream Writers podcast and Aaron McLane of Launchpad Pod. Both seasoned professionals in the entertainment industry who love and work in horror and have a thrilling horror project they are developing, one we are more than thrilled to champion along however we can. I'll let Patrick first talk about himself a little bit and maybe a little bit about this project that they got brewing. Patrick, how are you?
Yeah, I'm great. It's so great to be here. This is really, really exciting. I mean, we started off the week in our Twitter spaces or X spaces, whatever you want to call them
Mm-hmm.
at this point. And it really just got me in this mood to be here tonight and spend Sunday night with all of you. But yeah, I come from a horror backdrop. I've been a horror fan since I was a kid. For those of you who tuned into the spaces earlier on, you'll know that I grew up reading horror novels as a kid, really great children's books back in the day. Like, I think that's one thing that's lacking in this day and age is those great horror geared and focused literary vehicles that are just like they're just not there anymore, like the Goosebumps of the world and the In a Dark Room and the scary stories. And I grew up on that stuff, and it really got me jazzed and into this whole horror sphere, and it's really exciting to still be a part of it. And I've kind of lived my life knowing that I wanted to deal in horror, to write horror, to be a part of this world, and it's been exciting. So, I'm a producer also by day. I produce different pieces of content online, television, film. Was in the Broadway sphere for quite a long time. I actually worked on a horror Broadway show called Misery. It was basically based on Misery, and it starred Bruce Willis, Laurie Metcalf, and I got to work with a great team on that show. So my horror vernacular spans all sorts of different mediums, and yeah, a little bit about 13 Ghosts. Led me, that whole horror world and whole horror background led me to team up with Aaron as far back as college. We went to Emerson College together, and we were making zombie movies. He was doing the makeup for my movies, and I was working on his movies, and we just had such a great time in school. And then we had this little gap in between where we didn't talk to each other for quite a while. He went off and did Walking Dead. I went off and did my thing. And then as far as reuniting, a couple of years ago, we reunited. We formed Primordial Pictures together. We started writing great horror specs together, and it led us to 13 Ghosts, which is fairly new. December, right, Aaron, of last
Yeah,
year, we just started kicking that off.
yeah. We did our breakdown in December, and we pitched to Sony just before the writer's strike hit, man. And fingers crossed. That's what we're really
Yeah.
pushing for. Is that as soon as all this stuff resolves, hopefully we get a show going. That would be the best case scenario. That'd be incredible, right?
Yeah, 13 Ghosts the series, and we're really, really psyched for that. And right now it's sort of in creative limbo with Sony being the gatekeeper of the other part of the rights and Dark Castle being unanimously supportive of it.
Yeah, you're
And
on
right
board.
now we're just in a holding pattern like a lot of creatives. But that's where 13 Ghosts is. Really exciting. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it later. But for those of
Mm-hmm.
you who didn't hear the spaces, it's a lot of fun. It's really an incredible mythos, incredible world that we've created with that series. But I'll throw it over to Aaron to talk a little bit about himself.
Yeah, man, just like you, been a fan forever. I mean, as a kid, I loved horror. Universal Monsters was my jam. Night of the Living Dead, I watched that on VHS, scared myself silly. And I've just been, ever since I was a kid, let's make movies. And got really lucky when I got to be on The Walking Dead as the VFX supervisor. It was a dream job. Let's kill zombies every
So
day.
cool.
How do we kill zombies? How
I
do we
love
do the
that.
how do we
I
do
feel
the
like that was from you,
practical?
man.
How do we do the digital? Like just getting to come to the table
So
with
cool.
creative ideas to help make real things just work better. I mean, that was super fun. Love that. And then, yeah, Pat hit me up one day with a text message. And he's like, I'm kicking around this idea. It's these two sisters, they're twin girls, they're trapped in a cult. And I just texted him back, yeah, and they're werewolves. And he said, yes. And we just wrote a script off that. Daughters of the Moon. It won a bunch of awards and festivals. Like,
I
people loved
love
it.
it.
It is over the top crazy, but super
So
fun.
much
Truman
fun.
Show werewolf thing. But like we've written like 5 scripts now, and it's been so much fun. Kicking around 13 Ghosts. We just finished another one like this week. We did another pass at it, so we've been having a lot of fun, a lot of success, and teaming up with you guys like to come up with some great ideas. I'm super stoked about this.
I love it. Yeah, and we're super thrilled to have both of you guys to be here to collaborate, to just kind of share your creative magic with the community, the horror community at large. Because what's so fascinating with this 13 Ghosts thing, especially that you guys are working on and developing, is everybody wants it in the community, the block of horror community. You guys have had like 30 publications being like, yes, please, when can we make
Yeah.
this happen? Oh wait, there's a
Yeah.
strike. Okay, maybe not right now. But like everyone's like waiting in the wings, like, oh yeah, we all want to see it. So that's kind of the beautiful part about this moment. I feel like not just like with your guys' project and 13 Ghosts, but like almost like in history is like maybe like we need this moment to remind Hollywood, to remind Sony that like community matters. Like if the horror community really, really wants something, and like you guys are obviously like very talented, excellent professionals, like we want to support you to make this happen. Like in my opinion, how can you say no? Like the people want it, then you give the people what they want. So I'm just super excited to vouch for you guys, support what you're working on. And yeah, anything 13 Ghosts you guys got going, we're happy to support in any capacity because it's really like a mission for the people to like let's make this happen no matter what. So
We're
that's
happy
how
for
I
your
feel.
support. We're happy that you're behind us, that the community is behind a block of horror.
Mhm.
It's been great. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. Without further ado, this is WrAIth. This is the creative cauldron of death, is what I call it, because hey, it's horror, right? We're supposed to have a little, some deathly fun, maybe. So the block of horror community, like I said at the top, they voted in the Discord on 3 of 10 of their favorite prompts, kind of like log lines, loose kind of structures to start from. So I'll read each one just to give the audience a taste of what they are. And then you guys are going to basically deliberate for the next 10 minutes or so over each one, going over each one. Like, what do you see? What are the possibilities? What could we do with it? And then kind of whichever one fits your juju today best, let's run with it and see how we can kind of, mine the gold out of it, see what's there, see what we can come up with, take it in directions we can't even think of right now. I don't know. Anything's possible, especially in the creative cauldron of death. So
Oh yeah.
I'll start with the first one, just kind of go through each one, and then you guys will take it away. The first one, the highest voted one, it's called Revisited. In a town where residents disappear annually, a newcomer happens to stay during the vanishing event. He discovers that the townspeople aren't disappearing, but are entering a portal that sends them to an alternate universe, where they can murder and replace themselves on the other end. Very interesting. The second highest voted was titled Death Chord. A musician discovers an ancient sheet of music that possesses a haunting melody. The more they play it, the more it consumes them, leading to a terrifying transformation and an insatiable hunger for human souls. Interesting. Very interesting. The third is called The Late Shift. A security guard takes a job at a seemingly ordinary office building. However, during his night shift, he encounters supernatural entities lurking in the dark corridors, forcing him to confront his deepest fears while desperately trying to survive until morning. That's also very interesting. Okay. So leave it to Patrick and Aaron. Which one do you guys want to kind of kick the tires on a little bit? And if you want me to reread it, I can. 1, 2, 3. Revisited, Death Chord, The Late Shift. What fits your fancy at the moment?
Let's start with Death Chord. I want to see that one first because
I'll try that. Yeah, that sounds
yeah. Let's look at that one. So right off the bat, when I hear this, it gives me, Jekyll and Hyde, obviously. Hands of Orlok. These are movies about musicians. But then that idea of a sheet music, finding this like cursed sheet music, this ancient sheet music that changes him, that draws him into this. It says transformation, which that's exciting. I like that. When you think about this, Pat, like what? First of all, I think we need to throw to the community while we're talking about this. What genre of music does this fall into? And I think
that's a good point.
I think it'd be cool to get two genres of music because you want one that the musician is like he's a classical guy or he's a metal guy or he's an old blues guy or he's a trap beat artist. But what is the genre of music that the sheet that he finds in? That seems older to me, but I think there's something there that brings two worlds together. That would be a really cool way to weave this in. What do you what are your thoughts on this one, Pat?
See, like immediately when I first saw it, I thought classical, but that's like the easiest, right? That's like the most evergreen, easiest. That's what everybody's going to go to. And then weirdly, that popped into my head was like punk. And I know that's strange, sort of like in a green room kind of way. Did you see Green Room? Like heavy metal, right? Because what's fun with that is you can go genre like period 80s type horror, right? And sort of visit that world too, where it's like punk rock, like you got that vibe going on. So those are the first that kind of entered my mind. What about you?
Well, I was thinking exactly like the musician. He could be a punk musician, a metal musician. I was thinking, if you're going more contemporary, like a trap beat artist, but like
Someone said country, by the way. I'm watching the chat. Someone said country.
Gregorian chant.
Tube and throat singing. But like he grew up like playing for his dad's church or something. So he knows how to play organ. So from that he finds this piece of music and he's like, "Oh, even though I'm not from this world anymore, I came from it. So I know how to read this sheet music." And he finds this melody, this tune blacks him out, and when he wakes up, people are missing. And it takes, a little bit of time to weave that story together. But when people who know me, they know that I'm like mathematical of how to like break out a script to start with. And it's like by page 10, he's woken up and he's like, I don't know what happened. Think American Werewolf in London. This is the first time he wakes up in the zoo, after that transformation. Like you got to be rolling and get that mystery going. What does Pat, do you see this as like a physical, like a literally he transforms into a monster like Jekyll and Hyde, or is it more of like a metaphysical thing? It's an idea.
Yeah, I kind of like the internal, like Jack Torrancy kind of shining, like mental transformation rather than a physical monster movie kind of transformation. I always love that psychological stuff where what's going on in his head? What is the music doing to him psychologically, right? That's the road I would take. How about you?
Bad pitch. Here's a bad pitch. Nutty Professor style. He's a punk musician, but when he plays this chord, he blacks out and he comes out like a smooth jazz. Like he's like just this Casanova.
I like that.
But he's murdering people, he's murdering people. But like he's a completely different genre of music and like super confident, super smooth, but like killing people left and right. Like that's a bad pitch, but that's funny, right?
I love it.
But it's totally like the best of both worlds, right? Because it plays on the psychological thing. And then it also plays on the Jekyll, because we're saying the same thing at the end of the day, right? It's that psychological element. So I think I like that. I like that he becomes this alternative version of himself, the alternate personality, right?
Yeah, like if he's a country guy, suddenly he is like a punk rock musician killing people at night.
Right. It's cool. It's kind of like The Mask too, right? It's like you put on the mask, you become someone else. And again, Nutty Professor, right?
Oh, right. Well,
I dig that.
The Mask is a really good thing. So one of my favorite Hellraiser stories. It's Hellraiser Box of Souls. It's anyway. It's Hellraiser's Blues, and it's one where this guy has a puzzle box. It's a guitar. It's a comic book, and he goes in, and at night he's playing at these juke joints, and the guitar like forces him to play, and the chains come out of the guitar and kill everybody. And I thought it was one of the coolest like alternate versions of Hellraiser I've ever read, because it's like you've never seen a different version of the box very often, and like it was just so cool as a comic book back in these like old '90s Hellraiser comics. And it's like, in my mind, there's something cool about like taking souls, the hunger for human souls, while he plays, like, because there is that symbiotic relationship when you're on stage performing, you're taking the energy and feeding it back. It's very symbiotic, and I think there's something where like, you know, people get so amped up at this alternate version shows that he like takes their soul.
I also like the gothic kind of angle too. You can do a Carnival of Souls. Have you seen Carnival of Souls, Aaron?
Hell yeah, man.
I just love like the organ music, that like creepy organ music that she plays because she's at the church and she plays it out. And
when
then
I was brainstorming this,
she becomes possessed.
This is why the organ popped into my head. If you could tie it into Carnival of Souls, it's what she wrote when she's in that trance.
I love that. It's such a trancey kind of music too. If you did the organ style, just you can like riff on it, and it also like root wise, it goes back to like the roots of Mozart, and you can go back to those kind of
church
roots also. So it's good classical,
music,
but also blend. But it also brings in that religion too, that sort of like weird, deep rooted. So I think that for some reason, because someone threw out the Gregorian, I think that kind of music sort of appeals to all, right? Like that could be deeply rooted. Though that's the one thing that like punk rock doesn't have, is it doesn't have that. I mean, every music has roots, but like it doesn't have that feel of roots, that kind of harkens back to.
Punk rock is very much a rejection of roots, though. Like punk rock is very much like we reject
So
the status
true.
quo, and our passion is enough. It's not about our style. It's not even about our skill level. It's about our passion and our anger towards the establishment, man. That's why punks are.
I wanna throw a loop in this one for you guys.
Dude.
Could you see this if this was like played out into like, how could we turn this into like a Marvel universe? Like totally going out there, by the way, could it be that like different music with different characters give you like different, not necessarily abilities, but different, it turns you into like a different type of monster or something? Like I'm totally just making this up. But I don't, like, if a studio head was like, you guys got to make 5 movies out of this, like, what would you do? What could you do?
Melody can be played on any instrument. You can have a harmonica, a kazoo, a harp, a harpsichord. Melodies can be played on any instrument, and like depending on what you play this cursed melody on, like that is what like if you play it on a harmonica, you turn into like this country singer. Like that's what makes you like there's something that's interesting.
It's a curveball.
But it's also the evolution. It's also the evolution of the melody, right? Because like I kind of love the fact that you've got that baseline melody. That's the first film, right? You start off. This is the clear-cut melody, and I don't know why I'm thinking about this, but I have this like Ocarina of Time thing in my head. Did you just play like the Zelda Ocarina of Time, where you had to play the melody, and you get that stuff stuck really ingrained in your brain. So you've got that main core melody, but I like, to your point, Zach, the evolution of the melody throughout different genres of music, right? That's a really interesting thing there.
And that this isn't the only time that this has been discovered. Something historical, these cursed items, the Book of the Dead, the puzzle boxes, they've turned up time and time again throughout history. So you have this like we said, a Gregorian chant, like this old monk from back in the day, he discovered it first. And like, that's like when our main character starts uncovering the history of this thing, like you can see that it's popped up in different versions throughout time. This guy played it on a harpsichord in the Victorian era, and like he went into a mad rage, and like, somebody plucked it out on a banjo in the deep Appalachians at some point. And it's like, you see that it pops up through time, and like, where did it come from? And it's like, oh, you find a musician who is so talented, so gifted, that you get this Devil and Daniel Webster thing, where like
That's so funny you said that. I was thinking
yeah,
Devil and Daniel Webster, which is like a super old reference and nobody's
well,
gonna get. But I get it. I totally
but
get that.
Devil went down to Georgia.
Yeah,
This demon appears
yeah.
and says, I'm going to give you the greatest song of all time and you will be the greatest musician. And they're like, yeah. And they become this fantastic musician, but they're harvesting souls from the people that hear it. And it's like they get
That's so good.
popular, and that's what
I love
that's what
that.
drives the growth of this demon spread by giving them this chord. You know, somebody has to be so good, and they get closer and closer and closer to writing the greatest song in the world.
I kind of want like there to be this side narrative too, and
Mhm.
we're really ripping off this, but like discovering what within this chord or what within this structure is doing what it's doing, and there's sort of this element of like in a way that the Da Vinci Code had an element. I love that stuff, like the cipher. Like
Mhm.
what within is it the tempo? Is it that there's so much that goes into a piece of music? Is it like the tempo,
Mhm.
the speed, the whatever that is, or is it just within the structures of the chord? Is there something hidden in that that's like harkens back to like right the
Dude,
walls of
yes.
the walls of the temple, or the
Yes.
walls of like
But I'm seeing this
underground.
I'm seeing this roll in the chat right now. The ending has to be a battle of the bands with the demon.
Oh
You know,
hell yes,
hell yeah, it's got to be a cross. It's
yes.
got to go down
Like
to the
Tenacious D,
crossroads.
like Pick
Yep,
of Destiny type.
pick of destiny. You got to go down to the
Yeah,
crossroads. Sign to the North Star, and the demon appears like the
so
empty
good.
crossroads. That's how they learned to play the blues. You'd go down to the crossroads, sell your soul to the devil, and you were granted
Yeah,
the gift of the. I'm getting goosebumps. I'm so pumped now.
so
This was the
good.
one I wanted to go
And
first with this one because this is the one I didn't. That I was kind of like,
well,
yeah, it's
it's
fine.
perfect. It's perfect. So now that we got all excited about this one, let's rug to the next one. All right, are we doing Revisited or the Late Shift? And if you guys want to come back to Death Chord, we can, of course. But just to kind of touch on the other two, Revisited, remember, is the town where the residents disappear and there's a portal where you kind of turn into a murderer on the other side of, is my understanding. And then the Late Shift, which is the security guard. Everything seems normal except there's demons around or something. What are you guys feeling?
I want to do revisited because
I
late
want to
shift
do
I have a
Revisited
huge
too.
pitch. Late shift
Oh,
I'm
okay.
like that's the one that I was like voting for. But revisited and deathcore were the three that I voted for. But revisited's cool because here you got some like parallel universe Rick and Morty shit, which I am down for. Right
Yeah.
I love that.
now, I don't even know where to start. The person who comes to the town, I think they need to have a secret history where they want this.
Mm.
They don't know that it exists or they don't know that it's real, but they and when we first meet them, we don't know that they know that it's real. But this idea of the people transferring their lives. You have a person who's so damaged. You have a person who has sinned so gravely that they want to take that back. And so the first part of it is them discovering that it's true, and then when they go through the portal and have to swap lives, it becomes a bungling mess of disaster.
Hmm. Like
Right?
in a way, like a butterfly effect kind of way, right? Because that's one of the elements that I saw when I first read this pitch was
Right?
that the causal and effect, and it goes back to I'm thinking of King, and we talked a lot about King um, on the spaces that we had a few days ago, and King wrote a very unconventional King book that was turned into a horrible miniseries with James Franco, canceled. But yeah, it was not. It was what was it? The date of Kennedy's
Yeah.
assassination. It was
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
76, whatever that date, 11/3, 70, whatever, 60 something. But it was about a guy who went into a portal and he changed things there, and his mission was to try to prevent the Kennedy assassination. So, I think when I'm thinking of this, that sort of came into mind. But I always think too of like, what is the portal, right? What does the portal actually look like? Is it under a bed? Is it in like someone's dresser? Is it one space? Because I kind of don't see it as like the traditional circle that you just
Right.
walk in that's sort of just like there. I think it'd be really interesting to think about what did you think, Aaron, that the portal looked like, or what's a clever way
Well,
to introduce the
because of
portal?
what the first one was, the first choice was about people in a cornfield and children of the corn. It was them just walking into the
Right.
cornfield until they came out on the other side.
Yeah.
But I think there is definitely like, what is the portal? I think that's really important.
So
One of the
important.
things I always talk about, like the difference between time travel and universe jumping, is the paradoxical time travel. And people are like, well, you can't go back in time and kill your own grandfather because it'll kill you. Where in reality, if you go back time and kill your grandfather, you're now a murderer that nobody knows with daddy issues. Like that's really what the situation is. Like time doesn't go in a cycle; it goes and folds on itself. So, in that sense, it's like I think these are parallel universes that if you go back and you try and kill your version of yourself so you can assume your life from that point forward, but you realize their life is completely different. So what you thought the problem was fixing, you're like, oh, I hit this guy with my car and now I'm a murderer. So now I get a chance to go back to another point in time where I didn't hit this guy with my car and fix that. But you go back through that portal and suddenly your wife hates you. And that's a new problem you got to figure out. And your boss sucks and you accidentally kill your boss. But the problem isn't what you're fixing. The problem will always be within you, and that's where good horror comes from. The guy who jumps through this portal thinking he's solving this problem by trading places isn't fixing anything, because if he's because it's horror, he's a murderer in this world, he's going to mess up and start killing people in that world too. Like he's not fixing the problem because he isn't fixing himself. And I think that's what's really exciting about Revisited is he's getting to live his life again to try and solve these problems, but in the wake is just destroying everything else, which is exciting.
Well, I kind of don't want. I don't know about you, Aaron, but like,
Yep.
what would be really cool, I think, would be for all of this to be established, right? Before he goes to the portal, he realizes all this stuff in the first like 20 to 30 minutes, like the act one. I think a cool act two turning point would be like he gets stuck.
Yeah.
He can't come back out. He gets stuck there, but he can't, either in the Groundhog Day way, he can't get out unless he does X, right? You've got to always raise those stakes, right? And I think if he's able to come and go freely, not to fall into that trope and the trap of like a butterfly effect, right? Because we don't really want to revisit that
They can't come
as a
back.
vehicle.
I think this is a one-way trip. It's 100% a one-way trip.
One-way trip, and I think that in a way that which Nightmare on Elm Street was that, where the bus keeps going round and round in circles?
Oh, it's a truck. It's the truck. That's in part 4, Dream Master.
Part 4.
Yeah, because you're
Right.
like the first time
Right.
it happens, you're like, did I rewind on accident? Did I skip back a chapter?
Right.
Did my editing jump? Every time I watch that movie, I'm like, wait, what's going on? I get confused, and then I'm like, oh yeah, this is that movie where that happens. So let me throw you this. And this was an idea I wrote on a time travel script that I was working on. I'll throw this out. This guy goes back to this point in his life where he knows where something's going to happen. And you get to, like, I would love to do a heist where everyone knows what happens, but it's just re-rolling the dice on it. So like if this guy's a bank robber and he wants to go to this town and get the chance to do the heist again, but this time his partner in crime who he loves, but they're dead because the heist went wrong. Like there's something there where like you get to redo this and you know everything that happened, but because you've gone through this portal and you're living it again, it's changing. The beats, the rhythm of the universe has changed.
Yeah.
Like, whew.
Heavy. There's a lot of emotional levels here, and that's why I love personally. This is the one I loved the most because it has so much potential to infuse those like emotional touch points, and that's something Aaron and I are really, really big on. Whatever we do, and a lot of people call it elevated horror, right? I just hate elevated horror as a term, but like it's something that takes it to another level and makes it become more than it is. I know it sounds like, well, that's the definition of elevated, but yeah, I think that
we always talk about this though. we always talk about this, and it's my my red sauce analogy. You guys like Italian restaurants? You guys like Italian cooking?
I love your red
Um,
sauce analogy,
my
Aaron,
red
by the way.
sauce analogy.
Please tell everyone about red sauce because it's use
Italian,
it as like a recipe. No pun
good, yeah,
intended, but
good Italian cooking doesn't matter what the vehicle is. The whole point is to get that delicious grandma's red sauce into your body. It doesn't matter if it's on spaghetti, rigatoni, lasagna. It's all the same stuff. It's just a different vehicle. And at the end of the day, like quote unquote elevated horror is just giving a little extra attention to the reality of the character building. Whereas I think a lot of horror, the characters don't matter in a Friday the 13th movie. They're replaceable. That's fine. I'm still getting the red sauce to my body, man. At the end of the day, the journey you take, if you infuse a little extra character and people are like, that's elevated. No, that's just good movie making. Not to say that a Friday the 13th or a Freddy movie isn't good. It's just a different way to ingest it. And, you know, they don't care about the characters as much. That's fine. I'm having a good time. When you watch an A24 horror movie like Hereditary or Talk to Me, they add a lot of scenes where the characters are like, I had this tragedy. That's good character building. And I like that too. But,
so El Inca, I'm just looking at the comments, and I love that this is very participatory because this is a great idea, and it got my brain thinking. Right, so he goes one-way portal, right? But it replaced themselves in the new world in the most violent manner. But that got me to thinking, Aaron, what if something transpires there where like you have to up the ante on like the way you murder someone? Like this is a very Saw way to take this path. Like the more you have to continually murder more brutally, and that's how like you up level. There's like this thing there that's really disturbing.
It's interesting.
But tell me this though, he doesn't murder his guy outright. He comes through the portal and his guy gets away trying to murder him. Then you have two of them running around in this universe, and it's a do or die for both of them. You got this Highlander. There can only be one, right?
Yeah.
I think.
And
but
speaking,
I like the up the stakes of the murdering. I like that. I like the one upping the type of kill it is.
I think there's something to that.
It was interesting what El Inca said that because it got my brain thinking. And this is a perfect example, Aaron, right, of like how a small seed can from an idea can blossom into something. Like El Inca threw out that. We riffed on that. And then there's all these multiple levels that we can just keep climbing in that idea, and it could just turn into something. So planting that seed. Thank you for doing that, El Inca.
Oh yeah, guys, keep throwing those ideas out. We're seeing them go. Highlander.
And that's an excellent point. And just to move on to the third one, and then you guys are going to choose between these three what we're going to even dig even deeper and really let that flower explode into blossoms that spray the earth far and wide. Is the late shift. So a security guard takes a job. Is he ordinary? It's just an office building. It's a night shift. And some supernatural stuff starts happening. And it kind of makes him confront his deepest fears while trying to survive. What do we make of that?
Pat, your turn to start.
See, now you got me starting on the one that's most fleshed out for you, and this is a recipe for disaster. But I'm going to throw out my thoughts on this because we talked a little bit before we got going on this together. We cheated a little bit and talked about it, but I think I like your idea, Aaron, in making this bigger in the sense that, and I threw out this analogy, Poltergeist 3, or like something that takes place in, because I threw out the idea that I thought this was very much like that other movie, what did we say the name was?
The Last Ship. Malum was the remake of it.
Yeah, Malum. I don't want it to turn into that because like that's just, it's a little bit played out just in that one frame, just in that one remake of Last Shift. It's a little played out. But if we make this into potentially like, I think your idea was like a creature feature in a way, like there's a monster that evolves within this larger office space and this larger building, right? Wasn't that your idea?
This has huge Overlook Hotel vibes in 1408.
Overlook Hotel.
Yeah, in 1408, like the past, present, and future all live within this place because you're in a power vortex. And in my mind, I'm reading this, and it's like this guy has stumbled into this job at a place that has been engineered and an architect has built, and it is a vortex. It is a constructed antenna to bring about an elder being. So he's trying to bring a kaiju level Cthulhu monster out of it. And this night shift guy has no clue. But inside the building, think if you were just inside a radio antenna and he's just getting transmissions day and night of the past, the present, and the future. And at one point he opens a door and the side of the building is just gone and this giant monster is just destroying the city through a wake of destruction. He's like, what the what? Closes the door, opens again, like it's just a normal room.
Nice.
And like he keeps seeing like cult members going into the basement. He witnesses a ritual. He sees the architect like breaking this down. In my mind, there's like he is seeing the past, present, and future all in it. And at the end of the day, what he does to try and stop it causes the birth of this monster.
I love it.
Like so cool.
I love the inadvertent like creation of a monster. I love that stuff. It's just like, wait, oh crap, we just created something through doing this and meddling. I like the meddling. Like you meddle, it's always like horror. If you meddle, you create something, and because you meddled, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is the perfect one to like to dabble in the dark arts, and then it creates something terrible that you can no longer can't contain because it's like Jurassic Park, right? Like
to add to you guys too, it sounds like there's a lot of room for like comedy to infuse within this character, this kind of like aloof, security guard maybe at some points, and like I don't know, like what do you guys think about that from like the horror side the comedy side of horror? Is that something you see, whether it's in this or just in general? How to like infuse that, like like you said, he's like trying to solve a problem, but he like doesn't know how.
Paul Blart Mall Cop with demons and Cthulhu's in the basement.
So
like,
good.
It's night at the museum, but instead of Ben Stiller running around a history museum, they're running around this cursed Poltergeist 3 thing. The other good thing about this is because it's apparition level stuff, and like you don't know, you actually don't know at what point he actually exists in this time period. He may have been stuck there forever on this loop. Like at the end, you might find out that he's just been doing this forever, and like, it's just his curse. Like if you're in an antenna of demonic soul sucking, Cthulhu raising power, like you can kind of have it float through time and come up with wild scenarios, kind of like how the Overlook Hotel will just throw random stuff at you, where you'd be like, a ballroom of skeletons, guys in dog costumes, no. Like the scariest, weirdest stuff would just pop out, and you didn't know when or why that was happening. It was just terrifying, and I think this has a lot of fun to play with the incongruous, but then also the comedy. If like Wendy was hysterical as well as terrifying.
This is totally a Seth Rogen movie. Did we just like stumble into Seth Rogen territory, Aaron?
Right? I mean, I love
this is
the
like
end.
the night,
this is the
end
end
before. Like
this is the end.
This is the end. That's right.
Oh.
This is the end, but it's also like a cross between that and Night Before, where they're in the office Christmas party. I could totally see this as like a thing. What if it like started off somewhat like that, where there was like some sort of a party there at the office space? Is that a terrible idea?
Oh,
that wasn't like a night shift.
But wait.
Actually,
he can keep going. Like he can every now and then go to like open the door. Like again, he opens doors and things are happening, and sometimes it's there and sometimes not. But like every now and then he goes in. There's this office party, and he like can get a drink there, and he's like, oh my gosh. He's like, everybody's like having this party rager around him, and he's talking to the one person who's still working, and he's like, this keeps happening to me, man. This is what's going on. The guy's still working. He's like, I just need to get these reports done, man. He's like, no, you don't understand. The reports don't matter. I don't think tomorrow's coming. And he's like, what are you talking about? It's 1976, man. And he's like, what? Like, I love office party vibes.
Oh my God, I love that. Oh, and that's such a great idea.
Hilarious.
It's not just going through different like iterations of the office in time and place, but it's also going through like time frames of the office culture.
Yes.
Like it's like hot tub time.
Yes, because 100%. If you have this building, in my mind, this has to take place in like a New York office building that's been there since the 30s. So like, how long has some of the biggest office buildings been there? And they've seen the Madman era. Like he keeps running into this jerk who's mean to him, and he thinks he's a guy who works late, but he's just like this ghost of a madman. And you're like, huh. and then like he keeps running into like this janitor who and I think there's a great opportunity for a character where the janitor's like he's like, I can help you through this, man, like I know what's going on, and like the janitor somehow has it figured out, but you're like, wait, are you real or are you a ghost? And like you don't know. Like that could be really cool, right?
Well, what if every generation has dealt with this thing, like in a Jumanji kind of way? Like it started in the 30s, right?
Yes,
And maybe there was
yes.
this weird satanic Ouija board thing
But
that
they've
happened.
never pulled it off. He pulls it
Right,
off and
right.
accidentally awakens the demon.
Right. I love that. It's like the stupidest person pulls it off. Like
Yes.
at the end of the day, it's like like life and culture have evolved, yet they've devolved because it took a devolve of culture to awaken.
Because
we're
there's
too
been
smart and too polished.
the history of the night guards, yes, and there's a wall of like
so
esteemed
good.
night guards, and he's like, what is
So
up
good.
with these guys?
It's
And the esteemed
hilarious.
night guards have been like stopping the demon for ages.
Oh my god, I love that. So Doodle, the janitor, at the end of all this, it's all like, that would be funny if there is a janitor character. He said like the janitor is the reason it's there. What if there is like this janitor that's like in a way that Bruce Almighty, like God was there, but he's the janitor, but the janitor is really like the devil, and he's been the only constant through all of the lifeblood of it, and he's
he
like
finds,
edging everyone
like,
up.
Well, and he like trusts the janitor at first, but then he finds
So
a weird
good.
note that's like, "Don't trust the janitor." And he's like, "Why? That's the only guy who seems cool to me. Everything else doesn't make any sense. The janitor's the only guy who's talking sense." And the janitor like leads him into this like releasing of this demon beast that ends up
So
destroying
good.
the world. And
I love it.
and the esteemed history of like night watchmen that have stopped this event time and time again, but the person who's training him like dies, like has a heart attack, and he doesn't get the memo of like, oh yeah, by the way, you have to reset this clock every X number of years or the demon gets released. Like, it's one of those like ticking clock things that he doesn't know exists, and it's just like, he's just
Well,
so
there should be stakes, right? Like in every story, this is number one rule. You've got to have your stakes, and they have to keep increasing.
Yep.
I think we have to put some sort of like a time thing on this, right? Like there has to be, the moon is in alignment at this time of this place, and it's gone through all of these things, and this is the final. It all goes to you, and it all rests on you now.
That's why I'm thinking like,
yeah.
hey, you have to reset the ancient like grandfather clock in the hall of this big business building. You need to set that every hour because it's off. And if you don't set it, and he's like, okay, I guess that's the dumb part of my job. And like the second he forgets it, it causes everything to go wrong. And like, have you ever seen After Hours, that weird Martin Scorsese movie?
It's one of my favorite Scorsese in the weirdest way.
Well, because it has no plot. You're like, this guy keeps bumbling into weird things. And I think this is a movie that has great way to utilize that, where there is no like on the overarching level, he's bumbling into all these scenarios and situations, and the plot exists, and we find how that works. But I think this is a great After Hours template of like, how do you make something that feels very incongruous, very fluid when it comes to plot.
This was my least favorite of the three when we started, but it's become this is a perfect example of how an idea could start off as like my least favorite to you, and then it evolves into something that has become my favorite. I like this one now the best, as the most potential. I could riff on this one now for the next couple hours because it's so good.
So good. These are so fun, man.
They're all good.
They're all good.
Is this the one? Is this one we would like to continue to riff on, or would you like to revisit Death Court or Revisited? So Patrick has spoken. Patrick says late shift.
I'm gonna vote for late shift because I'm getting jazzed about this. I think it's really exciting. I like the comedy /
the comedy.
It actually has elements of all of the three in a weird way. But it's got the best of all the other two within this one wrapped up in ways too, but in a better, I think, more riffy kind of way that we can continue with.
Yeah, I think I'm down.
Okay.
I think late shift's my pick too. I wanted to go back to Revisited for a minute, but I think what I want out of Revisited is here in late shift.
I also like
Hmm.
the relevancy now because there's so much. We always think about this too with Aaron and I. We think of like,
Yep.
okay, well, it's a great horror movie, but what connectively to what's going on in the climate of right now can we tie into the story that we're telling, right? And this one, there's so much
Hmm.
going on right now with like return to office. I think there's even a way we can meld that into this, right, Aaron?
That's
It's like
funny.
everybody's remote
Hmm.
right now, and it's like this is the guy who's got to return to the office, and there's something cool we can play with there, like return to office being like the allegory of no one wants to return, and now like there's a good reason why you shouldn't return to the office because shit's going down here at this particular office building.
And I
um
think when he gets here for the start of his job, because is it his first day at the job, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think well
When
yeah, I think it's first day of the job, but
It's
like
up to you guys.
I mean, I think, well, the more I think about this too, like what if it's, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's the
I don't
first day of the
know, like,
job, and he shows up at this office building, and there's like protesters outside being like, "This is an unethical company," blah 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 blah.
mm,
And somebody's like, "You want to work for the devil?" And he's like, "Oh man, it's just a
right,
job." And like, I think there's some
right, that's
funny things
great.
like he like just ominous, because you got to have your doomsayer, you got to have your
That's
harbinger of doom,
hilarious.
your crazy Ralph. There's some person out with a sign. They're like, "You don't want to go in there," and he's like, I just want this job, guys." Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I think
God.
I think there's something there about like, and you know what would be great, like they're protesting against something that in a corporate sense is evil, right? But it's like
Hmm.
the allegory for the real evil of, because everybody kind of thinks about this, right? Like what are these, there's so much talk of that, right? What are these companies actually doing? Does Amazon, haven't you seen YouTube videos? Is Amazon secretly a cult, right?
Yeah. Right.
Or is Disney secretly, right, a cult in their source? I think there's something to play with there where
He's
this
got
is
oh
evil corporate, but it's
he's
also
got
a
to find
cult.
one of the founders of the company in like a cryogen freezer in the basement. Like he's like we got to have like dude, this
So
thing has
we
to
gotta
have
have the like the what was that house of a thousand corpses, the Dr. Satan in the
yeah.
basement? That this thing is like cryogenically freezed. It's
Cuz
their
Disney's
ultimate
Disney's
founder,
head is
the
cryo
founder.
frozen
It's
under
the
the
founder.
Matterhorn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
Um
founder, right? The
here's
creator.
another great one for like a moment of like peace. Like he hears this weird knocking, and he goes into this office and it's empty, 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 and he hears knocking. He's looking around, and there's a window washer just hanging out, and he's like, "I'm stuck. Help me." And he opens the window, and this like weird little dude comes in, and he just has a conversation with him. And that's just like this, like I'm back to After Hours, where you just have this like bizarre conversation with somebody, and it just centers him, where he's like, okay, I can go back. But like I said, if he has something that every X number of hours he has to go reset, like hit the button again, press this button one more time to
Yeah,
check in, reset the clock, rewind his watch, whatever it is, he needs something that every hour he has to do or his job fails. And he doesn't think
right.
it's that big of a deal. But that's what gets him out of scenes continually. Yeah, I want to watch this cult thing keep going, but I got to go back and reset my watch. And that sounds silly, but if you build it in a way that like the stakes seems higher and higher as it goes, like that to me is what will make this like really funny and kind of like terrifying in a sense too. Like, can you
And it's got
imagine
to
if you're
break, Aaron. It's
yeah,
got to break. Whatever he keeps resetting,
he
right,
breaks it at some
eventually
point.
has
Yeah.
to break. He has to break it, and then it's like, shit. Now what do I do?
And,
Now the stakes are are the highest, right? So Act
yeah,
Two breaks the damn thing. Shit,
yeah.
you know.
And then at the end of it, like he accidentally releases a Godzilla monster, and it starts
Yeah,
destroying a city. And in my mind, that's a sort of thing that he only sees from the from an office window of a wall that's been destroyed. You don't have to build a suit. You don't have to go, full Godzilla level, but you need to tease it in a way that's substantial. You show him walking off into the distance, smashing buildings and destroying the world, and he's just like, "Oh, damn. Well, I hope a coffee machine still works."
I love
Like
how he releases it into the world. Like I could just see the protesters outside the whole. But that's another fun little cutaway thing. Like the protesters are always there, which is a really fun return to. I always love those things, right, Aaron? We kind of pepper those in as
Mm-hmm.
like the return to joke, right? And they're always outside, but at the end, I could see them finally they release it, and it's like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man moment where and the Godzilla moment where it's out into the world and all of the protesters are like, holy shit, and it's like boom, and they like get stomped, and then it's just shit. It's released, and I think that for an act 3 would be really fun, where they have to like kill it, you know,
a
and
ton
find a
of
way.
opportunities to have the funny like office jokes, like the coffee machine that doesn't work, the copier that just spitting out copies everywhere, and he's just like, he keeps encountering these like classic office space, the office jokes that are just like classic, you know.
And
And
someone said in the chat, the elevator, funny way to just tie in Death Note, but like someone said the elevator music. And I always love that, is like the theme, right? It just, the chords just play the same damn thing over and over. And I love that. I love that because he's got to get in the elevator.
he gets in the elevator and it's the same,
Same
the same
song,
shitty
like
music.
in the way Groundhog Day was Sonny and Cher was just over and over.
Oh, it's Girl from Ipanema for me, man. That's the song that, like, I don't know why. I don't know why. It was like in high school, I had to learn that in Portuguese. And it was like, for whatever reason, anytime I hear it, it just takes me back to a horrible time. So it's just like, dun, 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 dun. I'm like, nah.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
And
that's funny.
can I add
that's funny. Zach, wait a second. Someone wrote the janitor watches the monsters
Go for
the city, and he goes, "Not again."
Yes. Well, because again, if
again.
if you're stuck in this like temporal vortex where this just is happening on a loop, like that's great.
I love it.
It's great. It's great. He gets a reset.
And I wanted to ask you guys a question about this protagonist guy. Is there a world, and maybe this is what we're talking about, I'm just clarifying for my own mental stamina, is he like oblivious to everything? And it's almost like all of these things, like it's almost like the tension of like watching him like, don't press that button, but he doesn't know what anything is until maybe the end or something, that like and that's where the comedy kind of keeps coming back through him, is he's doing all the right or wrong things, obviously, when those levers need to be pulled. But his perspective is almost like he's literally just doing his job. And so like the story, like the narrative is funneling like around him. And so obviously you need secondary characters that you're like building the emotion and all that stuff. But his own emotion of his job is like, I don't want to get fired. But like like he doesn't know that if he opens that door, he's gonna get eaten by a monster. But like he's jiggling the key. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you build all the tension.
Yeah, that's the Act 1 stuff.
Okay.
I totally, in the way that like Shaun of the Dead, right? He's just going around his day, but like he's oblivious to the fact that there's zombies all over. He's just brushing his teeth, doing the thing, and he's going through these motions. That's really a really funny, really good point. And I think that's definitely, those are Act 1 touch points for sure.
Exactly.
And then eventually he's got to realize like shit, you know. And that's what's funny, because then that's the rewatchable. The whole Act 1 is like just you're watching him just. We know, right? But he's oblivious.
He's missing all the ghostly.
So
like, yeah, he's doing the shining bits, but missing all the creepy, like the two little girls are like, come play with us. He's like, gotta work, kids, bye. You know, like he's just going about his job. And I remember, like, you know, when I was first a PA on set, and you're just like, I don't want to get fired. Is this how it's supposed to be? Because this seems like chaos. And like he just is like, this office building's weird, man. What a mess. And yeah, he is oblivious to the fact until he starts getting clued in that like, oh, there's some ghosts. And like some of this stuff isn't from this time period. And like, oh, I walked out of a party, opened the door again, and the room's empty. I think there's a lot of like really interesting things about this. The other thing I like this is technically it's a one location thing. Even though it's a big location, it doesn't take a lot of space for that, which is cool. And like that gives you the room to build it to a kaiju level monster stomping off through a city at the end. Like that's you know, you didn't have to go to a bunch of locations and figure out a lot of specifics out of that.
It's got to be living in the parking garage there. There's something underneath the thing, like it's ready to come out.
Exactly. It's like in a secret tomb that this thing was built over. Like it's been there for millennia. And you know, the architect who developed this cult, I'm thinking Ivo Shandor here for any Ghostbuster fans. You know, he's the architect that built this building on top of it, and it's this antenna for all the energy, the evil energy that's just pouring in to waken this monster. And like, you know, and maybe there's something happening on the outside that that is like he keeps catching blips of on the news or on the radio, like some war that's happening, and then like the second that like it's all the planets coming into alignment. It's like the seventh son of a seventh sun rises to power in the west, and the great forces of the sun will drop upon and like there's this weird like prophecy that he pays no attention to, but like we as the audience start seeing the prophecy line up, and we're like, no, dude. And then it's like the one guy isn't going to press the button at midnight, and that's the last straw. It's just like,
well, there's so much spin-off potential here too. It's like, well, in a Cloverfield kind of way, once the thing's out, you can do the last the late movie. Shift. Right, the late shift is just the precursor, the entry film into the world of this thing, and it's almost like a reverse Cloverfield, because Cloverfield did, right? Then they have like what was that one where the bunker with
Cloverfield
John
Lane.
Goodman in the bunker.
Yeah.
And we all didn't know it was a Cloverfield Lane. It said Cloverfield Lane, but we all thought it was a movie about a guy who keeps this person captive in the base. Spoiler alert. Like, John Goodman was actually trying to really keep that person safe and everybody else locked up and safe from the thing out there. I think there's really fun world building things here where we can have spin-offs that are all in this late shift world.
Oh my God. Like, my biggest dream in life is to do a kaiju movie. Like, if I could do a Godzilla movie, right? Oh my
It's a good way. This is a good way in, Aaron. If you want to do a kaiju movie, like we just have to figure out the way the kaiju is birthed, and this is a really clever, fun.
This is the cool birth of a monster. Yeah, you get your giant monster. Oh man, I can't wait. Guys, please, somebody start doodling. Give us some art. Like, can we see kaiju monsters?
This is a good one.
Cthulhu creature. Like, think Godzilla mixed with like a Cthulhu. Like, what is like? It doesn't have to be tentacles. I like some tentacle monsters as much as anybody else. But like, what does a giant monster birthed out of like American cult soil look like?
I just love this. I love this so much, and I love that the place is technically kind of empty, but except for when he returns to different eras.
Yeah.
Because there's something here again with the work from home thing with remote, and the office is empty, and like the janitor's pissed, and everybody's like, God damn it! Like everything was going, but now we have to put it on pause because everybody's home. Right. But it gives the good opportunity of like, look, there's no one to distract you but the past and the things that have happened, because everyone's gone because no one's working from the office. And then you got the guy show up. He's like, oh, I come in Mondays and Wednesdays.
And that's why he's surprised when he starts to see people. And like I said, I love this idea of like this jerk who's like from the 60s. He's an ad man. He's literally Don Draper. Like, if we can get Don Draper, this would be magic. And he's just a jerk to him. Like, all the time, he's like, do your job, button push. You're not supposed to like talk to me like that. And like every time he sees him, he's just a jerk to him. And then like he realizes he's from the 60s and like he's seeing a ghost. And that guy jumped out of the building at some point.
Why couldn't we get like a John Hamm, right? I mean, John Hamm does comedy. Like, he's more of comedy now than he is in Mad Men world. But like, he just did a
movie. He just did a movie about a business, like a big business building that has liminal spaces hidden inside of it, and it's called the corner office, and he finds a key.
Yes,
that when he goes into the key,
that's right.
The corner office is this like bitchin' place, and he gets like baller work done in there, and he's a madman. But like everybody thinks he's in this crappy little closet, and he's like, well, "How are you getting all this work done?" He's like, "I'm going to my office," and like it's a secret room inside this office building of like a liminal space, which is like great concept, but I think it only went so far. Ours is like that, but like, there certainly could be a room he goes into, and it's like all these dudes are drinking whiskey and smoking cigars, and he's like, cool, but it's not real, and they're talking about bringing about the end of the world.
That's so good. That's so good. El Inca just said, how about a giant inverted pentagram like in the building? I think it'd be really funny, and I always love these stingers at the end where it's like the whole time the helipad on the top was like the pentagram helipad, and it's just like, of course, this existed from the the beginning. It was always ingrained in the building since like the 30s.
And Doodle Ferp said this. She's like, there's a lot of like public domain Lovecraft stuff, and like you could have a whole scene where
Yeah.
he like opens the basement, he hears a noise. Because one of my favorite Lovecraftian stories is when the guy goes into the basement, it keeps getting deeper and deeper, and there's rats everywhere. It's terrifying. Rats are terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's like he could like literally be swarmed with rats, and you're like, what? Like why? Because there's a giant monster in the basement. It's driving all the rats out from the subway. Like, there's so much cool stuff. He finds a map that really shows how weird this place is. Like all the subways lead under here. There's a huge junction under here for every subway in New York. Because like when you think about the building of New York, there's a lot of space for mythology there because it's like a city on top of a city built on top of junk. You know, there's a lot of mythos
Yeah.
you can put into that like Illuminati level of city building and world building and secret societies and cults and stuff. That's super exciting.
Graveyard Grifter had a good point. This is a really great question to ask. Does this all take place in one night? It's really funny that Grifter asked this because we pitched a chopping mall remake to Shout, and that was one of the questions that they had. Is like, does this all take place in 24 hours time? Right? What do you think, Aaron? I think like it
Yes.
would be cool if it all took place in 24 hours because because time could in that way that pulling in elements from Revisited, while he visits these different time periods, it could be day in one, it could be night in the other, it could be something somewhere else, but 24 hours in this plane, but bending time on other planes, you know?
I think there's
So yes
something.
and no.
I think there's absolutely something to that. Like, it technically does take place in his one shift because again,
Right.
thinking back to After Hours, like that movie takes place in one 12-hour thing at night of this guy trying to go score and the whole time things keep getting worse and worse and he keeps running into Cheech and Chong and like what a weird movie. What
Yeah.
a weird movie. But like if you added and it's horrifying. Like it is scary. Like oh man, yeah, late shift is or After Hours is one of those movies that I really struck me in a weird way because you're like,
Gotta
oh,
watch it again.
well, and it's like it's not a good Scorsese movie, but as like
It is a horror movie. I think
it's
Scorsese, by the way, Scorsese is a huge horror movie fan. That's where
yeah,
his like roots, Peeping Tom and like, Leave Her to Heaven, all of those
Uninvited.
movies.
He loves Uninvited.
Uninvited, loves Uninvited. He's a horror fan. There
Yeah.
are, and he said this, I think, as well. There are so many elements of horror elements in After Hours. It's actually, I think he even said it's a horror film,
Yep.
or he intended it to be a horror film. But
It's
it's a lot of
horrifying,
fun,
and
guys.
it's.
Yeah,
I mean, oh god, it struck close to home in certain ways. Like I think there's so much in this where it's like you got to really draw on the office drama and the weird happenings and like I like again I said I love the idea of like the window washer being there at some point where some guy's just been trapped out there for ages.
I love how you said it's a window watcher. Going back full circle to my childhood reading scary stories. Do you remember the Viper?
The
And it was
window viper.
Window Viper. He washes and wipes your
I'm
windows.
here to wipe your
And it's like,
windows.
I'm here to wipe your windows. And it's just, I love the ending of that because it's kind of a funny, like, tongue in cheek. But when you said window washer, there's not enough horror window washers that have ever been resurrected through horror culture. And I think this is our opportunity
I
to
just
do the
watched
Viper, modern
so.
day Viper.
the shitty movie Q the Wing Surf It. Super fun, crappy movie, real bad, but like kind of fun. And it opens with a window washer getting his head bit off by a giant. And like I'm watching this, and in the IMDb trivia, they're like, "That's actually the window wiper of that building." And it's like,
Right.
oh my god! And when I worked in Burbank, we were on the 22nd floor of the Burbank Tower, and like when I'd see the window washers out there and their little carts like waving in the wind, and I'm like, no, thank you, man, that's terrifying, terrifying. And like,
Yeah.
I think it's a cool character to have. I think there's just so much to play with. I love the party idea. Like you said, Groundhog's Day, Scrooged. I think Scrooged has a lot to do here. Bill Murray movies. We're gonna draw a lot from Bill Murray on this.
Question for
Yeah.
you guys.
Yeah.
Is there a world where I'm just totally spitballing this from what you're talking about, like this window washer, if he, part of his contraption broke, and so he's hanging by a thread before he like falls to his death. But like, what if like, is there a world where like that could be throughout the film in some capacity, or like through an act where like outside of the world we're living in from a storytelling perspective, there's some ancillary event that's also like a horrifying event that nobody's noticing except the audience. Like almost like this, like every time we pan and we see the window, like he's still hanging and he's like trying to get it and just like, but it's like not, it's like it doesn't exist, but it obviously exists for that person. We just never
I love
clue in it
that.
into
I
it.
love
But then maybe
that.
it comes full circle later. I don't know, but
I love that stuff. It's just like he's literally there, and every once in a while there's a blip, and I think our lead protagonist walks by the window, and we just see him. He's like, "I'm still here," you know.
Yeah.
There's so many funny comedy movies, and that's such a
yeah.
classic comedy vehicle. That like the person's still out there, and it's just, oh, wait a second, just want to remind you, audience, he's still out there. So we see him for a
Yeah.
blip, and that's a little like kind of fun little nudge.
And
So
and then
cool, yeah.
secondarily, a couple more minutes to kind of wrap out how we see very gist broadly. Where do we see this kind of coming full circle at the end? Is there kind of like a finishing touch with the protagonist, or how it sets up to like expand the world on the next story or movie? Like, what are you guys thinking?
I think like Pat said, like you end with this monster wreaking havoc on the world, and the potential sequel is, people outside the world dealing with this giant monster attack. I think the end of the third act is him figuring out. I say in heavy quotes. He thinks he knows what he has to do to stop whatever this event is from happening. What he doesn't know is that what his action is actually causes it. So, womp womp, he messes up supremely. But he, middle of the third act, he comes to the conclusion, this is what I need to do to stop this event from happening, to stop the Armageddon. He goes on a quest into the building to try and execute his plan. He encounters probably the architect. I think the architect of the building is a good supreme antagonist, but it could be the janitor. It could be there could any character we meet along the way. But he encounters the supreme villain and defeats him. But in doing so, like spills the blood upon the seal, and the seal is broken. Something like that. Like whatever he does to stop whatever he does that to him is a big victory. Like I did it. Rumbling cracks in the floor. Demon arises.
Right, it's got to escape, and that's I think to me the only sequel potential. There's two options actually. First, the thing gets out and it stays out, and then now the next stories are the kaiju stories of like, oh, we've contained and now he comes back, or it's like it gets sucked back in and then it's time for another one and then it comes out. And the cool thing about this is it's truly, Aaron, we've just crafted this into a Godzilla world where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
or any other horror, baddie, right? Jason Voorhees, like Freddy Krueger, more so Freddy Krueger, Freddy's, what is it? Or Jason with Jason Lives, where he like gets, he's found in the, what was the one? Was it Freddy where he's in the, I think it's Freddy where he's in the, garbage like thing, right? And it's like he's back, and like the dog pisses on the corpse, and then like
he's in the car pile, and the dog pisses
car
on.
pile.
That's
Yeah,
again
that's what I'm
part
thinking of.
4.
It's like,
You love Dream Master, you don't even know it. Yeah, the dog pees fire on the corpse where they hit him. Pees fire, and then you get a Jason the Argonauts moment where he's like swiping at the kid. Somebody just said the window wiper falls on the monster and rides it away, and I'm like Slim Pickens from Doctor Strangelove, and I was like, oh, hooey, riding the bomb.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a great image. But yeah, that's the
hysterical.
That's the lifeblood. Is it's like it's got to be put back, and then it's got to be comes out again, and then every movie. It's unlimited sequel potential. Every movie it comes back, and you have to figure out how to get it back in.
Somebody said by letting the window wiper into the building sets things in motion. That's a fun idea. And I also love Ash in Evil Dead goes to stop it, but actually starts it by reading the Necronomicon Ron. That's exactly what we're aiming at. Like I think this is definitely a very Bruce Campbell Ash type character, where like
Yeah.
kind of an
No, totally.
kind of an anti-hero in a sense of like he doesn't want to be a hero. He's not trying to be a
Mm-hmm.
hero. He's just trying to do his job and get
Then
through the night.
he shows up in the second one. It's like it is like the S Smart, right? It's
Yeah.
like The Office. He shows up and he's like, I've been through this, kids. I had to deal with the first one. This is the only way to kill the beast and put it back in its place. And he's got his, I think that's another thing to think about. What become his signature weapons, his signature style, from a character's perspective. Like we can go on. We haven't even touched on. We haven't even
Dude,
touched on
this
that
is
yet,
where you get
folks.
to have
Like,
a
what are
lot of fun. Like what in the
Right.
office? Because like if you're a security guard, you got like a taser and some zip ties. Like I don't even think you get a
what
billy
becomes
club
his
anymore.
what
But,
becomes
like,
his signature
Yeah.
boomstick, right?
Right? Like he's got to find something funny, like a vacuum cleaner. like what is it? There's something
Yeah,
hilarious there.
I think he cobbles together different things, and then he
Mhm.
definitely has an outfit, and it's like a cross between, right, like the button down, Van Housen dress shirt, and like who knows, but it's a fun office spacey kind of attire that morphs into like the boomstick thing, and
It's stuff he collects through time too. Like I think there's
yeah.
something
Oh,
to
that's
that.
that's
That's
smart.
fair.
That's
Like
yeah, that's really good.
and to do that, the gag from Independence Day, like when he finds the cigar smoking guys, he puts one in his pocket and he's like, for when I win, and like just when
Yeah.
he's smoking the cigar at the end, the monster comes out. Like you get that. He's like, I did it, I won, I beat the bad guys. And he's smoking a cigar.
That's great. I love that, and I love the collecting things through time, because actually different office cultures through time allow different things, right? Like
Yeah.
as office culture evolves, you get less and less, because what you're allowed to smoke in the office, right?
No,
In the
like that's the
70s
thing.
and
Like he smells
80s.
smoke, and he's like, "You're not allowed to smoke in this building." And they're like, "Since
Right.
when?"
Right.
Dude, he finds bottles of really nice booze and uses them as Molotovs.
Great.
Okay.
That's great. I love collecting things through different eras that
Here's
are used
another
to
great
assemble
weapon.
his-
He has a keyring the size of his head. I don't know, like, because I was in charge of a pool once, like a big pool area, and I had this keyring that was just like, I don't know why I have so many keys. I don't know what half of these does, and he has them on one of those chains that extends, and he uses that like a mace. Shoo, shoo,
Great.
shoo, whoop-pow, and like that's his like kick-ass,
I
one
love
of his
that.
kick-ass weapons is this chain, and he could use it as a grappling hook at one point. Like rappel down with the chain
And
of
then-
keys.
And then when he comes back through the next films, right? You were just saying, Zach, about the next evolution of it. He's got to have the same stuff, the tried and true stuff that worked. Obviously, he
Mhm.
evolves and uses different things, but I like that he has that signature, and I go back to it for Ash, but the boomstick, the thing that's
So-
like his signature.
Here's a good note that came up. Graveyard Grifter. Would there be a person he saves, like a damsel in distress or an intern, or is it better for him to be alone? And this is something that I often fight with. Movies. So Punisher movies, for example. Punisher movies always assume that he needs to have a female presence, or movies that are centered on a woman think they need a male presence for it to make sense. I don't think you have to have one or the other, but I think you definitely need to have strong characters on either side of it to make it work. I don't want to shoehorn a romance character or something. I think a lot of movies would make that mistake and be like, "Oh yeah, there's a love interest," but it's like, "But why? Why is it? Just because you think that draws a demographic?" Like,
Yeah,
make
that
the
was the
movie make sense.
downside to me of Army of Darkness. Like you had was it Cheryl was his girlfriend for the first?
Yeah.
Like Cheryl was in the first one. You got
Yeah.
the little like thing that was great, and then Cheryl's just The Evil Dead 2 always weird is like a weird movie to me, because it's like, well, it's just the same movie. It's just the same
Just the
thing.
same movie.
It's the same damn thing.
But you get the chainsaw, like you get
the chainsaw. But like the Armed Darkness, I'm like, why they didn't have to have the damsel that he meets,
Yeah.
and
I
falls
mean,
in love with.
I'm
'cause he's-
absolutely not opposed to there being characters that help round out the world that he's in, and I definitely think there's a world where he keeps running into an intern who is from a different time period, who's just like, she's like, "It's my first day too. I'm hapless. This is terrible. Like, these people are jerks," and then like
Yeah.
you find out that like the madman guy, she works for him, and he's like, that guy's a jerk. Yeah, I hate that guy. And they find common ground. But I think
Yeah.
I don't want to hit the pitfall where she is just a driving plot force for him, because that's what happens in movies. You know, we want to make sure that we keep her character being important for their own reasons and not just because the plot says so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think there is a world where you need to have him meet other people in the building, and meet you know, if he's a guy, you know, meet other women so that we have those characters. But I just want to make sure we don't make it a love interest for no reason or something like that, you know.
But it's also good for a budget standpoint, because like if we keep down on, it's one guy, it's like the Castaway, right? He's
Yep.
the guy, and there's a few key characters, but like he's
that's
our
good for
main. He's a
cameos,
true
too.
protagonist.
Like you said, like
Yeah.
if you can get John Hamm as a cameo, this is a good place for a lot of really cool cameos to pop
Good
up
place.
for a random scene. You know, if the window wiper, if they're only in one scene, man, that can be any awesome character. Because
Yeah.
when you're trying to get a big character, I don't think a lot of people know how. I'm just learning about this now. When you're trying to budget / schedule a show, and you're trying to get a big name actor, and they cost $1 million, you only get them for 3 days, barely. You might only
Right.
get them for 1 day. So you need to get
Film
that.
all the window washer scenes.
Yeah.
and-
So you need to not.
yeah.
You need to make sure all their stuff is condensed in a way that they only appear in one location, in
Yeah.
one setup, in one. Like, you need to make sure it works. So like when you're considering a part for like a huge star to come in and play a cameo, like that's something you do need to think about. And I think this is full of those moments.
Wow, this is really great. I'm digging this one. This is really fun.
No, I love it. And just to kind of, you know, it's getting about that time to see how would you guys, based on what we've kind of come up with thus far, how would you summarize the night shift, or the late shift? Sorry, the late shift. As far as how you see it, maybe like an act 1, 2, 3, or just kind of like a little ballpark, like this is what this is. If you're in an elevator, just kind of saying, hey, I got a great story for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's evolved, right, Aaron?
And-
Hapless.
Yeah.
And no worries, it
hapless
can be
secu-
fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it evolved to like hapless security guard. But you know, I think the you even lean it out, like hapless security guard stumbles on you know like a satanic angle in his company, and that spirals into releasing this creature from beyond or whatever, something like that. Right, Aaron? That's like the main thing it's evolved into. Like and you can even say, like in your pitch, Paul Blart meets, you know, like
Cabin in the Woods,
funny.
almost. You know.
Paul Blart meets Cabin in the Woods meets Godzilla or something. You know, I think, or meets Kaiju, right? Like, I think you can even kind of condense it down into that, and I think anyone would get that pitch. It's like, whoa, that's kind of cool. That's different, right?
I love it. Yeah.
But from an act structure, what do you think, Aaron? It's like Act 1 is
Act 1, you started as a hero's journey. Act 1, his Obi-Wan Kenobi dies. Like you start with him meeting somebody who's going to take him on this journey. He meets his Obi-Wan Kenobi. You start it just like Star Wars does, just like your classic hero's journey. But where we turn it on its head, is his Obi-Wan Kenobi dies and leaves him at Mos Eisley. So now he's suddenly in like the center of scum and villainy and has no clue how to navigate it. And I think that's Act 1. The turning point is his compass breaks, whatever that is. Whether it's the guidebook, like even if we don't have a person, it could be funny if he's left with a binder, and in the binder there's things, and then he spills coffee on the binder and all of it's ruined. So like he's like, I'm like 5 pages in, and the only thing I know to do is reset this task every hour, the menial task of repetitiveness. I have to reset this thing. We got to figure out what that is at some point, but you know, whatever that is, that's all he knows how to say is like, well, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to patrol, and that's all I can do. But there's like a binder of stuff that's been ruined that he doesn't like. That's funny to me, right?
Yeah, that is really funny. And again, like the entire Act 3 is, Act 1 is basically establishing and I love your thing, Zach, where it's like he's going through the motions and he's like just doing his job, and inadvertently he's releasing this thing, or he's getting the steps to this thing to evolve. And then Act 2 is like he realizes it, and then he has to he has to like figure out in Act 3 how to contain it and get it back in its rightful place. I think
Yeah,
like he lets
the
it out
beginning.
in the second. The turning point of Act 1, right, into Act 2 is like he releases it, or like
No,
he
no, the
right like
turning.
well Act 1 is he is going through the motions,
In
and then
Act
Act
1, he goes
2,
through the motions. In Act 2, the beginning of Act 2, he realizes that the events he's seeing are
right,
supernatural. In Act 1, he's seeing weird things,
sure.
strange things.
So
Act 2,
Act 2 turning point, he releases it into Act 3, and that's when it releases, and then Act 3 is he
I,
releases,
I,
and then he has to get
I,
back
I
in.
think. I think Act 3 is the very ending. The last 5 minutes is he releases it. I don't think the monster gets released till the credits roll.
No. I think we're talking about the same thing, but like not released from the building, but like it's being released in as far as like the curse goes. Like he's going through like reading the spell book, right?
He's yeah
I
yeah
think
yeah.
he needs
He's
to. He
he
needs
he
yeah
he actively gets okay. So yeah. Act 1, he loses his compass. I think that's really important. That's the
right
catalyst. He loses his compass, but he goes about his job encountering strange things. Act 2, he realizes the nature of the strange things and has to solve the mystery. And
right
he's put on that path.
yes
The beginning
yes
of Act 3, he gets a mission, which is if I stop this ceremony from happening that this cult's doing in the
right
basement, I can't
right
let these guys do this.
that makes
They're
sense.
going to release this demon. I'm going to go stop it. And the battle happens at the end of Act 3, and he
Yep.
accidentally releases the demon.
Yeah, and Chaos joined a little late. He was saying, but he's contributed something really great here, and he's along our lines. It's taking its final form in the act at the end of Act 3, and that's the form we see its physical manifestation of what it is, right?
Hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense. No, this is really great.
Awesome.
It's got great beats. I mean, it's
It's
got like
fun.
the stakes are there.
Well,
It's
and
got the
here's,
tension rising. It's building throughout the
yeah.
acts, and then the amalgamation is like the thing. And this isn't like something profound. I mean, this has been done in many. I can name off like 50 films that this has been done in, and you know, Ghostbusters being one of them. It's
Nope.
like it just the amalgamation of the thing at the end.
Here's some other good key points to this. So like the Act 2, I think the key thing, the break into Act 2 moment where he realizes that what he's seeing isn't real and messed up, is he opens the door and sees the monster stomping off into the world, and he gets a glimpse of the future. He gets a moment where he glimpses the future, and that's when he's like, something's not right, and then closes the door, opens it again, and it's not there, and he's like, oh man, there's mold in the coffee and I'm tripping balls, dog. And they're like,
Yeah,
like
I
like
kind of
he,
like that where you're going. Like, and I also the final form, right? What it does it look like? And I know we're wrapping up, but this is really important and interesting because this is an opportunity for us to make it look like it could eventually be added to as an amalgamation of all the generations of like it makes up what this thing
Mm.
actually ends up looking at in the way Evil Dead Rise. I don't know if anybody's seen that, but like that was like an amalgamation of like a cobbled together, like in a way, Society, right? If you've ever seen Society, where it's like
yes,
this
the
weird
shunting,
hodgepodge of like the
yes,
thing it becomes,
ah,
the thing like it has evolved into the thing, its final form from the
dude,
generations of everything contributing, making
how
contributions to its look, you know?
how great would it be like if at one point he sees the birth of this creature, and it's like they're
So
trying
good.
to, yeah. Chaos Manus said Night at the Museum but spookies. I love a spookies reference. More
Yeah,
farting monsters,
Spooky's
please.
so
More fart
good.
demons, please.
This thing has got to be absurd looking, and like,
Hmm.
and I think everybody adds to it. You know, what if everybody adds to like the way it looks, by their like contribution is not physically adding to it, but it's like they've created it in some way as like they add to the pot, right? It's
Oh,
like the witch's brew
the
of the
witch's
monster,
brew,
and it's like
eyes of a new.
tossing a little
Yeah.
of this, eyes of a newt,
So
like
my
this
my
ties
kid,
this in.
my 2-year-old is obsessed with Beauty and the Beast right now, and I was listening to this like behind the scenes thing about Beauty and the Beast, and this guy who created the design of the beast, he's like, I got a buffalo's body, wolf's feet, the buffalo
Yeah.
horns, a wolf's
Yeah.
like it named all the pieces, a lion's mane, and you're like, he really cobbled together all these different animals, and it's like that's where this creature comes from, is you find all these great pieces and figure out how to manifest this thing. Like that's an exciting
Isn't that
design.
it's that's really fresh, and it's like nixing the whole, hey, this is what this thing looks like throughout lore, and this is what you're going to release, and it makes it so much more interesting that it's actually been created since the 30s by the minds of people throwing in the thing of what it becomes. And I think that's what it ends up being, and that's really fun. It's like you can it's like a
it's literally what nightmares are made out of. It never
what
had
nightmares
it never had a true form until people
Right.
created it. It didn't
Yeah.
exist until people
Yes.
thought about it. And it's one
Yeah.
of those things that it doesn't exist until you believe it in it enough. And
Yeah.
the more and more, well, I always say, like, human beings are orchestrating their own apocalypse. It doesn't have to happen, but we're making
Yeah.
it happen because we're scared it's going to happen. And the more we're afraid of it, the more it will happen. And it's like I think that's a great way to build real world fear. I love real world fears that become monsters. And it's like this is a great way, like, to build like corporate evil and the fears of what, like, this entity becomes.
Yeah.
Builds and builds and builds into a real monster.
This sort of is like the society of office space meets
Yeah.
society in a way too. And Elinka said very Frankenstein as well.
Yeah, Frankenstein meets Jurassic Park. That's fun. I
Yeah.
love me Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
not to get as much as I love this, and this is awesome, guys. By the way, like, this is hilarious and awesome, and I want you guys to go make this movie right now. Just wanted to say, kind of like to wrap this out. Is there any kind of final like thoughts on the late shift for you guys? Like, do you want to keep the title? Do you think like, oh, let's call it this, or like, I don't know, what are you feeling? Any kind of like shift in anything that you're?
The late shift is too close to other titles to me. That was one of the things I think the title needs to change first. I don't know what the title becomes. I don't know if it's the name of like the office building. I don't know if it's name of like wouldn't it be funny if it's just a very generic game? If it's like Williams and Sons Holding Company, and that's the name of the movie, and that's like the building it's in. But like you need something that would draw people to the movie, like Evil Corp. David threw that one out there. Evil Corp.
Could your subtitle be like the late shift? So like, could it be like headliner William and blah 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 holding company, the late shift? Like, I don't know, something.
It could be all of these things. All I want to say is, in the sequel, it needs to be whatever that title is, and then underneath, Return to Work. Like, I think it has to be Return to Work.
What if that's the title, Return to Work?
I
mean,
I
it's
originally thought it might be
like,
called Return to Work, because I don't know. I'm such a big proponent, and I think it's really important that whatever stories are told right now have some sort of relevance. And I said this before, to what's going on in society right now, because the best horror has always been a reflection back on society and what's going on in culture, and it mirrors that culture. And that's one thing we did with 13 Ghosts, going back to that, is like we wanted to make sure that like it was relevant in mirroring society's fears.
Big,
and I think this is something that can do that.
Yeah, I think we got to figure out.
Nobody wants to return to work, right?
Yeah,
everybody's fears returning to work.
But I think there is something like the night guard, the overnight guard, something. So we gotta figure out a title that makes sense to it. But I do think that.
How about this? After Hours. No.
Right? Well,
forget that other Scorsese. No, it's not that Scorsese movie from the 80s.
It's just a different After Hours. Yeah,
Right.
There's no copyright on titles, man.
Different After Hours. Yeah.
We'll just call it Lord of the Rings.
I love it. Well, for the audience's sake, feel free to hop in the Discord to continue kind of adding to this conversation. We'll have a late shift or other kind of title in the WrAIth section where you can submit kind of your own thoughts, and we can continue this kind of collaboration and see, obviously Patrick and Aaron as well,
we'll
and hop in there. Feel free to.
Yeah.
And just want to let anyone know watching, today's blood coin claim password is Primordial. So open a Discord ticket, and over the next 24 hours, give Primordial, and we'll be sure to give you a uptick in some blood coin. which we can talk about more at another time. But in closing, I just wanted to say, obviously, like special thanks to you, Patrick and Aaron, for sharing your time, and especially your passion and just everything you bring to the table. Like, not only is it just like fun, I'm learning a lot. I write too. I'm a producer, but like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great way to look at how to make the story have that turn and like make sure the character has that. And so a lot of informative stuff as well as entertainment, which I always appreciate if I can learn something, from experts, in my opinion. So for anybody watching, be sure to subscribe in the YouTube channel. You can follow us on Twitter, retweet, make sure to join the Discord. That's where the hot action really is going to continue to take place. And yeah, claim your roles, join some upcoming contests, share some ideas, and we'll continue to do some WrAIth episodes. Hopefully have Aaron and Patrick back at some point to, I don't know, is there a 14th ghost that we hop on here and see what we can figure out? I don't know. But yeah, thanks to everybody. And Patrick, Aaron, any kind of final thoughts for anyone want to follow you guys, check you out, like say, hey, like we have this big pod coming up that we want you to tune into, anything like that?
Yeah, man. This Wednesday, Launchpad Podcast is dropping a big episode about the Blade series, the 3 movies, and the television series, Sticky Fingers, which we had a lot of fun going into that. That's this Wednesday. Check us out, Facebook, Instagram, and X, and YouTube at Launchpad Pod, on our website, launchpadpod.com. And yeah, keep following Primordial Pictures on Instagram and Primordial Pics on X for to see what we got working on. We got a script we're hoping to get off the ground here, and that's going really well. And for more 13 Ghost News.
Ooh.
Yeah, and definitely follow Screenwriters Podcast, Screenwriters PC on X, I believe, or Screenwriters PC, because we can get Screenwriters Pod and Screenwriters Podcast. You know the plight. But Aaron and I have been talking about this for a while. We want to do an episode where we take the classic cult horror film Death Spa and do Death Spa the remake and just spitball something like we've done tonight and just go through the motions. And what would that look like? So we may do an episode on that. I'd really love to record that. But we have like a limited season of Screenwriters Podcast right now. So definitely follow along there. And then you can follow me if you want to. I sometimes say some cool stuff. I'm mostly just retweeting other cool stuff. New York in June on Insta, and NY in June. NY in June on Insta, New York in June on X. So
Awesome. Well, great having you guys, and thank you especially to the Keepers of the Block of Horror for joining in and participating. This was a lot of fun. We'll definitely be working towards some more WrAIth episodes in the future, maybe in a few weeks, maybe in October, maybe some new special guests. We will see. But as always, I like to close out with our 3 C's: to always be connecting, always be creating, and always collaborating. So thanks, everybody. And until next time, see ya. And thanks again to Patrick and Aaron. This was a lot of fun.
This was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Hey, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
All right.